All right, I gotta do this. Welcome back, Honors. All right, so I know some of y'all are probably a little bit confused about the scenery and stuff because I usually sit in front of my plants, my Van Gogh piece, and my Picasso man with guitar, blue period. It's a good one. We'll talk about it later. But anyway, so we left off in class talking about Hernan Cortez and his conquest of the Aztecs and Francisco Pizarro and his conquest of I swear, this one piece of hair drives me nuts. Sorry, guys. All right, so anyway, and Pizarro's conquest of the Inca, right? So we reviewed those a little bit in class. We talked about Charles DBQ a little bit today, and then we're going to get after it now again tonight. Now, so we've been focusing mostly in this entire time on this half of the world. Now, some of y'all are going to have to realize that I'm both up here pointing at a map, and there's stuff over here. This is about to get intense, okay? It's going to be fine, though, right? So now that the Spanish are there, now what, right? Because the Spanish are coming all the way from over here. And, hey, the yellow's showing up really well. All the way over here. And then they end up in this general region, right? They start out in the Caribbean. They start bouncing around. They take over the entire Aztec Empire in Mexico, right? Or the Mexican Empire. Then they expand all the way through Central America. Then they take over the Inca in Peru, and they begin to take up this entire area right here. So everything in yellow that I'm highlighting right now is Spanish-owned. Then they expanded up through Mexico and all the way up into like Northern California, into Texas, this entire region, right? That huge amount of land belonged to the Spanish. That's not including Argentina and Chile down at the bottom. That's not including the Philippines over in East Asia, named the Philippines after the Philip II, the Habsburg king of Spain. Does that make sense now? If you actually look at a census of the Philippines, most of the people that are Asiatic descendant in the Philippines have Spanish last names, right? So because of Spanish colonialism. That's why people in Mexico speak Spanish. It's why people in Central America speak Spanish. It's because the Spanish own this area, right? Well, here's the thing. It's not just as simple as owning something. You do have to administer, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to start dividing all this stuff up into what you would call like viceroyalties, all right? So viceroyalties would be established by basically just taking like little lines, and we'll use green, and they'll just go like, all right, this is the viceroyalty of Texas and California, this is the viceroyalty of Mexico, this is the viceroyalty of blah, and then, so they're going to divide all these little things up, and then they're going to appoint a viceroy, V-I-C-E-R-O-Y, to administer them. That guy's job is to report back on how much money is being made and send that word back to the colonials in Spain, all right, or to the leaders in Spain. Of course, the Castillo family by this point, slowly transitioning over to the Habsburg family as the Castillo family dies out, right? So, but this is making a ton of money off of several different things, right, that are not common in Spain, right? Silver and gold is one of the biggest things, right? It's discovered by the Spanish in a lot of different locations, right? A lot of different locations. That is one of so go ahead and underline silver and gold, right? If you actually look at silver production in your DBQ, as you can see in that source, the very, very last source, silver production across the Western world doubled following the discovery of this region of the world, including Central and South America. Doubled from 3 billion, give or take 3 billion, I think it's 3 billion tons or something like that. But 3 billion to 6 billion, the world output of silver. And guess how much of the gold and silver trade was controlled by the Spanish? Oh, I'll just go ahead and tell you. 80%! That's insane. 80%, okay? So you see a huge output of this stuff, right? And then you have another thing, right? Jot this word down. Jot this word down. After you get this, just put it somewhere. It doesn't matter, all right? So this is words you need to know. Cash crops, all right? As we all know, gold and silver are limited resources, right? They are a non-renewable resource. They are not just going to make more gold. This isn't Rumpelstiltskin. We're not going to turn hay into gold. It doesn't make any sense, right? So as these things begin to run out, the Spanish realize, well, we do need to pivot a little bit, and we need to find out a cash crop that grows really well in this region. And that cash crop turns out to be sugarcane, right? Sugarcane grows like crazy. especially in this region of the world, the Caribbean, right? The Caribbean actually grew to be called the Sugar Islands, all right, because it grew sugarcane so well. Also, there's this other little place that grows sugarcane really well. It's this boot-looking shoe place. It's called Louisiana, which is also the only state that still to this day produces the largest amount of per capita sugar in the entire country, right? So to give you an idea, the sugarcane grows in very hot, humid, arid climates. This is where your sugar comes from. Now, I love being able to teach this to kids in Louisiana because y'all know what sugarcane is. You smelled sugarcane fields burning. You know what it is. This stuff, though, makes 3 very all-important items, which made it such a big cash crop. These items are, jot these down, molasses, sugar, obviously, and rum. Rum became a huge, very, very cheap alcohol to be able to sell at a higher price. It's a very big reason commonly why pirates would drink it all the time, but we will talk about pirates later. I am going to be defending our pirate brethren very, very soon, but it became a very, very easy to produce thing, right? So sugar became a huge cash crop for the Spanish. Now, that was planted. Livestock would be ranched over this entire area, and then also, though, here's the thing. That's a lot of stuff. You got gold mines, silver mines, sugar plantations, huge agricultural ideas. Who's working that? So we know for a fact that the Spanish are not over here working these things, right? They're not over there actually establishing this stuff. Jot this down. Most of your Spanish colonizers are single men, all right? Most of them are just guys on their own trying to make a little bit of cash, right? So they're just single guys. Same thing with the French ones as well. And that was such a prominent thing that it actually led to these 2 new social classes popping up inside of the Spanish colonialism, right? So what that was called is, there we go. They actually had to add 2 new social classes to the Spanish colonialism. Mestizo and mulatto. Mestizo was a person of mixed race that was native and European, and mulatto was a person of mixed race that was African and European, right? And we'll talk about why these popped up here in a second, but it's important to know what they are. But the reason why we got to get into some other stuff real fast, there we go, real fast. Who's going to work it, right? As we can already tell, thank you very much, Chloe and Lacey, I saw that light bulb turn on just now. You're like, wait a minute. If there are people of mixed race, and if one's native and European, one's African and European, I'm assuming the natives and the slaves are going to be working all this area? You're 100% right? Now, which one of those groups do you think the Spanish are going to start with, though? They're going to start with the natives. And they enforce this thing called the Encomienda system, right? The Encomienda system. Notice it's in giant capital letters, and it's all in red because it's wildly important. Go ahead and circle it, underline it, highlight it, whatever you got to do, all right? So the Encomienda system is a very, very important concept, okay? Because the Encomienda system is one of the most screwed up things that's ever happened in all of history, right? A lot of people's defective answer to everything, especially in American high school classrooms, is, slavery. That was the big thing. Slavery, people were purchased. This is true. Something also just as bad, though, popped up first, right? And it was when Spain was granted the right to force the natives that lived in these regions to work for free. It was basically free economic slavery, right? Because it functions around a very simple idea that in the Spanish settlers' minds, they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were doing something that was completely legitimate. Because the plan was that much like the feudal system in Europe, that's a very important thing I just said, much like the feudal system in Europe, that the Spanish settlers were allowed to protect, care for, and Christianize the Native Americans. They're doing them a service. They're protecting them. They're caring for them. They're doing these things much like a noble lord thought he was doing for his serfs. And that the natives would work a portion of their time for the Spanish settlers reaping these benefits. That's the plan. The reality is that Spanish settlers forced long labor hours, did not pay native workers, failed to protect them from a lot of different individuals, including other settlers, and also seized Native American land, right? That's ridiculous. And also in reality, the natives are going to die from disease, harsh living conditions, and harsh working conditions in the mines and on the plantations, right? The Encomienda system didn't end until clergy members, members of the Catholic Church actually stood up and said, this is really screwed up, and they actually continued to under the replacement or repartimento idea, right? So This is a very messed up system, and this is what it looks like in pictures. This is the Encomienda system when it refers to the sugarcane plantations, the long working hours, and the aggressive force used to try and make them do it. So this middle picture right here is from an actual Spanish document showing the abuse of a Spanish colonizer on a native worker. Notice he's got a club in his hand, and this person's mouth and face are very bloody because he's been beating this person to try and make them work more, right? So, and then also, of course, the plantations was not the only place you could work. You could also end up working in the mines, which was extremely dangerous. And jot this little side note down real fast. Children were often used to work in the mines because they were very small and could get into small holes and actually move carts around much easier in narrow shafts, right? So, now the biggest thing about the Encomienda system is, jot this down really quick, it is going to be very profitable for the Spanish, right? They're basically forcing people to work for free, to reap the benefits of their own land, to give to people that don't even live there, right? So it's very profitable for them. But these harsh living conditions caused the Native Americans to die out so quickly that they then had to adopt a system of transatlantic slavery, where people were purchased from Africa and then brought over to replace the natives that had died because of the Encomienda system, right? You see what I'm talking about? That's why we ended up with two social classes that existed in Spanish viceroyalties. One was native and European descendant, one was African and European descendant. Also, really quickly, just to throw this out there, this word is a historic word, all right? It is a word that they used at this time. It is not a word that is acceptable to say in regular, everyday conversation. Do you understand what I'm saying? I just want to make that clear, all right? So this is not appropriate to say, like, out and about, all right? So don't say that. Don't say either of these, actually. Like, let people be people, all right? So now, the biggest thing, though, going forward, all right, we also have to talk about a couple other people that show up, right? You got other folks that are going to be wanting to colonize North and South America just as much as everybody else, right? I'm trying not to keep this thing too long, but we're just going to keep on rolling, right? First people we got, so notice we've got this entire area colonized by the Spanish, right? So is this like land just going to keep running around and being free and open to everybody? No, of course not. One of the other big guys that's going to come in very quickly and try to make their own money is the French. And they're going to say, let me make sure, oh, that green does not show up well. How about we do red? How about we do red for the French? They're going to come over, does that show up? Sort of. All right, so now we're running with red. All right, so they're going to show up in this area. They're going to land in Canada, right? French Canada, mainly areas of Montreal and Quebec. And they're going to start colonizing and settling these areas around this region, right? Now, the thing about it is we already talked about this briefly, right? Early English and French settlements were not very successful due to the harsh climate, right? So, because like it's very easy to establish settlements down here in this tropical climate, whereas it is not because Europeans were not prepared for the harsh winters in North America. So speaking of the French, though, they're going to colonize certain areas on their own. And their early settlements are going to be Montreal, Quebec, and then they're going to eventually venture down the Mississippi River and colonize the Mississippi River Valley, including areas like Louisiana, and then they're also going to push into this large area here in the central area of North America, right? So this also, they're going to colonize some of the islands in the West Indies, including places like Haiti, right, which is right there. So, and they're going to set up their own sugarcane operations there as well. Then you've got the English, right? The English, on the other hand, came, let's see, what color am I going to make? Let's go purple. All right, the English are going to come this way, and they're going to colonize most of the areas, and they're going to hug the East Coast, right? They're going to establish 13 colonies, as we all know. All right, so like 13 colonies along the East Coast, right? Ranging from Georgia all the way up to Maine, all right? Some of the big colonies included Roanoke, which was mysteriously lost after they settled that one. Sir Walter Raleigh actually set that early colony up around like late 1500s and the late 1580s, and then they're going to continue to try and settle an island that's in North Carolina. Yeah, best state ever. All right, so biggest thing is, though, they kind of lost the whole colony. Sir Walter Raleigh left for 2 years to get supplies, came back, and they were gone, and there was nobody there, so they lost the whole colony. Nice job, English. All right, so now, the other big colony, though, is right here in Jamestown, Virginia, where they discover a very all-important item that made the English a boatload of money, tobacco, right? So, and they're going to be the initial providers of it to Europe through the Jamestown colony, which was established in 1604, I think 1604, 1605. You want to fact check that for me? All right, so now, anyway, And then there's going to be another key one, right? So Jamestown, jot down next to Jamestown, it's a joint stock colony. It's basically thrown over there for the intentions of making money. What? 07. Dang it. Jamestown was 1607. I was close. All right, so now, the other one, though, is Plymouth, which all of you young ladies know about from the Scarlet Letter, right? Established for religious freedom by the Pilgrims. All right, so no, they're Puritan separatists. All right, let's go ahead and throw that out there, right? So notice I say Pilgrims, question mark? All right, so no, not so much. They're more like Puritan separatists because everybody back in England was like, Puritans, please leave. You're getting on everyone's nerves. All right, so stop telling us to stop doing the Eucharist. Stop telling us all this stuff that you learned from John Calvin while you were in Switzerland, avoiding Bloody Mary because she took everybody back to Catholic and was burning people at the stake. All right, so, and then the Puritans came back. They were like, we should get rid of all the Catholic stuff from the Anglican Church. Because as we know, when Henry VIII established the Anglican Church, it was kind of like diet Catholic, right? They still had most of these things that were Catholic, except Henry was like, I want to get married to somebody else. I don't know how he just became super Southern all of a sudden. But anyway, the most important thing is the Puritans tried to eliminate the Catholic elements of the Anglican Church, so the English are going to pretty much banish them out and send them to colonize these areas, because it's a win-win for the English. If they live and make money, the English make money. If they die, the Puritans are gone. So, like, they don't have to worry about it, right? They're going to survive, of course, with the help of some of the early Native Americans, which is very important. But then also another very important spot is right around this area when, oh wait, that's North Carolina. Maryland was established for Catholics. It was by Lord Baltimore. Pennsylvania by William Penn for the, for the Quakers. And then, nope, stop that. All right, there we go. Now we got the last couple of things we're going to finish up. There's no way we're going to get to this other stuff because this flip has been rocking and rolling for a pretty good little amount of time already. Now, this whole map, as you can see, is going to lead to a lot of bumping up next to each other, all right? As you can tell, the Spanish who owned this entire region down here, they also owned Florida, just to throw that out there. The Spanish own here, the British own this region, French own here. They're getting very close to each other. So eventually what is going to result? A war, right? So the French and Indian War, in Europe it's known as the 7 Years' War, is the first very truly world war, all right? So I know this is a hot take, and some of you are like, my history teacher told me there were only 2 world wars. It all depends on who's writing the book, all right? So, like, but during this time period, this is the first true world war, right? Because the wars in Europe were called the 7 Years' War, but in colonial North and South America, it was called the French and Indian War. Because the French and the British got very dangerously close to each other, right? And especially over some disputed territories in places like the Ohio River Valley, all right? So George Washington had his first experience as a military general in the French and Indian War. And it's called the French and Indian War because the French, who fought against the British, right, aligned with a large amount of Native American tribes, right? But here's the thing, the British did too. The British allied with the Iroquois Nation and several other groups of Native Americans as well. And basically Native Americans started placing bets on who they thought was going to win, thinking that if they supported the winner, that it would help them out as well in the long run, which it turned out it didn't really help them much at all, right? So, but this is the very first true world war when it was fighting over borders between these colonies, right? Because there is no established border. It's just regions in the Americas, right? So France is going to end up losing. Spoiler alert. I don't have time to go into the ifs, the quids, the pros, the James Wolfe replaced by William Pitt, blah, 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 blah. I don't have time to go into all that stuff because this is a Survey Western Civ course, all right? France is going to lose, though, in the long run, mainly due to the fact that the British have a fantastic navy that is undaunted or, like, that has no rival in the water, right? And they're going to lead land raids and and water raids, and they're going to destroy Quebec, and they're going to capture it, and they're going to, like, do a lot of other stuff. Listen to me, I'm already getting too deep into it. Now, France is going to lose, right? And what they end up losing that's also the Treaty of Paris is what ends this. But what they end up losing is they have to give this whole region to Britain. So they lose Canada, and they had to give, where's it at? They had to give the Louisiana territory to the Spanish because the British end up taking the Florida territory from the Spanish in the war, right? So Louisiana is going to end up passing into Spanish rule for several hundred years, and that's why the French Quarter has Spanish architecture in it, because of Spanish rule in Louisiana, right? So, And then France is going to get Louisiana back in 1800, mainly because Napoleon goes in and takes over. We will talk about that some later. All right, so but he's going to sell it in 1803. All right, so this is like colonial America. This is like all read motives, reasons why, the map. You need to understand like who's going where. If I like throw a map on your test. But that's it. That's where we're going to stop this flip because I want to talk about the rise of the companies, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to, so we'll talk about it in class tomorrow. I'll adjust planning. We are still taking your test, though, Friday of next week. All right? I'll see y'all then. Have a good one. By the way, this is the fact checker in my room that won't get out.